Morning. One of the appointed readings for today is chapter 19 of the book of Leviticus in the Old Testament. And when I saw this was on the list, I confess that my immediate reaction was that I wouldn't be using it in my reflection. Then I thought at least I ought to have a quick look, which I did, and was quite captivated. Now yes, the book of Leviticus, the book of laws, is heavy going. It sets out God's laws for society, and there are literally hundreds of do this, don't do that. It can be quite detailed. Part of chapter 19, for example, tells us how not to cut your hair. And I did wonder from time to time whether a particular law was helpful. But every now and then there were challenging points, even beautiful instructions with a message for today, for Christians, for society in general. And Helen's going to read some verses from chapter 19, so you'll get the general flavour of the book, and then I will comment on one or two of the verses that stood out for me in the chapter. So here, Leviticus 19, from verse 9 to 16, and then verse 30 to verse 37.
When you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap to the very edges of your field, or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Don't go over your vineyard a second time, or pick up the grapes that have fallen. Leave them for the poor and alien. I am the Lord your God. Do not steal, do not lie, do not deceive one another. Do not swear falsely by my name, and so profound the name of your God. I am the Lord. Do not defraud your neighbours or rob them. Do not hold back the wages of a hired worker overnight. Do not curse the deaf or put a stumbling block in front of the blind, but fear your God. I am the Lord. Do not pervert justice. Do not show partiality to the poor or favouritism to the great, but judge your neighbour fairly. Do not go about spreading slander among your people. Do not do anything that endangers your neighbour's life. I am the Lord. Observe my Sabbaths and have reverence for my sanctuary. I am the Lord. Do not turn to mediums or seek out spiritualists, for you'll be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. Rise in the presence of the aged, show respect for the elderly, and revere your God. I am the Lord. When aliens live with you in your land, do not ill-treat them. The aliens living with you must be treated as your native-born. Love them as yourself, for you were aliens in Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Do not use dishonest standards when measuring length, weight or quantity. Use honest scales and honest weights, an honest ephah and an honest hin. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt. Keep all my decrees and all my laws and follow them. I am the Lord.
I hope that gives you a general idea of the way in which Leviticus sets out the laws for a good society. And I just home in on one or two particular verses that struck me. There was verse 9 right at the beginning. Leave gleanings of your harvest and fallen grapes for the poor and the alien. Now, that may feel like an afterthought. The poor can have the dregs, what's left. But in fact, it's a kindly, thoughtful gesture. Farmers obviously wanted maximum profits from their crops and vines, but Leviticus is saying, remember those less fortunate, include them in your plans from the word go. Today we would say it's an example of business taking its social responsibilities seriously. And then there's verse 13, do not hold back the wages of a hired worker overnight. In other words, prompt payment for labour was important, still is, for people who probably live hand to mouth. So employers, don't delay, pay right away. And verse 14, do not curse the deaf or put a stumbling block in front of the blind. Now that's a very strong way of putting it, but I suspect all of us have been tempted to be impatient with those who don't hear and thoughtless when it comes to those who can't see. And the writer is urging us to be sensitive to those whose hearing or sight are impaired. And that seems to me a very relevant contemporary message. Then verse 32, rise to the presence of the aged, show respect for the elderly. Now, having reached a certain age, you can see I like that wording, rise to the presence of the aged. Again, it uses dramatic language to make a point, this time about honouring those who lived a long time and may have some wisdom. And then verse 33, the alien living with you must be treated as your native born. Now that must have been controversial, as it can be today, but it needs to be said. Foreigners among us, whether they are here by choice or as refugees fleeing violence, should be welcomed and honoured. Now, to my mind, these are powerful and beautiful instructions for a good society. And one lovely thing about most of them is that after the command itself, the verse ends with the phrase, I am the Lord your God. In other words, you act in these good ways because of your faith in God. And it's also worth remembering that Jesus grew up hearing these verses week after week in the synagogue, maybe even day by day, in the home of his devout parents. And though later he would warn his followers against being too legalistic and taking the law so literally that you forgot to do good, the commands in Leviticus were part of who he was, and they contributed to his message and ministry. So I have a new respect for Leviticus. Now, I don't advise reading the whole book in one go, but do try a chapter, and I hope you will find reminders that faith in God needs translating into practical law and action. Okay, some of them do sound odd today, but anything that reminds us to care for those who may be disadvantaged is worth taking to heart. Having quoted from a book of laws, I'm going to close with a prayer for lawyers, a group of people I rarely, if ever, pray for. But we need good laws and good people to uphold those laws if we want a just and fair society. So, to quote from a prayer of St. Thomas More, who himself was a lawyer, may lawyers and judges be keen in study, accurate in analysis, correct in conclusion, able in argument, loyal to clients, honest with all, ever attentive to conscience, and may they never, do in an argument, lose their soul. Amen to that.